Hi, Brianne. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hey, how are you?
Well, thanks. We're excited to have you and to talk about a topic that is definitely not something that we've chatted before about. And so I'm kind of looking forward to getting your expertise take on that. But what I would love to do to start is, could you share with our listeners a little bit about what you're currently doing with your IHP certification? And then we'll back it up, talk a little bit about maybe how you got there, what made you go into health and wellness if it's not something you were always doing.
Yeah, sure. So currently I'm living down in New Orleans. I have an in-person slash online practice, so it's pretty a hybrid. And I do see a lot of clients down here specifically with mold toxicities. So unintentionally, my practice has kind of shifted a little bit more towards mold. There's a lot of homes down here that have been impacted by Katrina, and obviously they're not, completely leveling these homes. They're just remediating and rebuilding. So there's a lot of mold issues that I've seen kind of pop up down here that coming from New Jersey originally, I did not see as much when I was dealing with clients up there. So in practice and virtual, I've seen a lot of different, toxicities. I would say parasites are really big as well for me. But I've shifted towards kind of helping people who really have hit a dead end with other modalities. A lot of people come to me that haven't been able to find answers with conventional medicine, and they're really just kind of stuck and they're almost hopeless to the point when they come to me. And once I'm opening up their eyes to all of these different root causes that could be driving their symptoms, I feel like they get that spark of light in their eyes again. So it's really rewarding to kind of do this work and to help people on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was maybe last week's recording or the weekend before that. I'm not sure if it aired yet, but I was talking a whole lot about sometimes when I tell a client that they have four things going on, it might be parasites, mold, yeast, bacteria, and heavy metals, right? You would think that for so many people, like that would be devastating news, or they would be like, oh my gosh, that's so much to work on. But so many people have been getting the answer of like, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. And all of a sudden you're giving somebody an answer really, right? Of something that they can work on. And it does, it like I've had clients break down in tears, or
Mhm.
they do kind of just like their eyes light up, or there's a little bit of this hope instilled back in them that if there's something wrong, right, then this might be able to be fixed. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
And
it is.
that's what I see a lot too when I explain to people how functional labs work and how they're so different. I always explain to them, we will find things on these labs. I'm guaranteeing we're going to find at least one thing, right? But the difference is that that one thing will come along with a plan of action and we'll be able to fix it. It's not, a diagnosis that you have to take a medicine for the rest of your life. It's something that we can actually work on rebalancing within the body. And once they realize that is when they start getting excited. They're ready for this wellness journey and they're ready to start making those lifestyle changes that sometimes are absolutely necessary, when otherwise they would be like, oh, you want me to eat better? Maybe. But now that they see it on paper, they're like, okay, this is something that I have to handle. And once they kind of get into that groove where they're finally making these changes and it's a part of their lifestyle and routine, they're completely different people. And I love to see that change on a daily basis. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. So is this something that you've always been doing, always been interested in? Were you doing something else before you got your IHP certification?
So I started this journey a while back. I would say back in 2014, 2015, I first got my first health coaching certification. I got my personal training certification, and then it kind of snowballed. I started with yoga. Um, and then my mom got sick. So my mom got diagnosed with leukemia back then. And I was very more intrigued than anything else as to why. I wasn't really, okay, she has it and that's the end of it. I wanted to know what was that driving factor behind it. And so many times I would ask that question and nobody would be able to give me an answer. So I decided to go ahead and work for University of Pennsylvania at UPenn. And I worked in their clinical oncology unit for a while doing clinical research trials because I thought that would maybe give me an answer as to what's been going on. When really all I saw was, it was just research on what pharmaceuticals could help. It wasn't really a root cause driven type of a situation. So I went on from there, and I continued to do my health coaching practice. I did nutrition with people, personal training, and I would see all these great results. Nutrition would really help people. Personal training would get these people like vitality again. But then there were still some people that I couldn't cross that bridge with. And that led me towards kind of opening up more of a preventative medicine mindset within myself. COVID hit. And as everybody's life kind of hit a very big pause button, so did my practice. I couldn't train people in the gym. The people that were open to virtual sessions, it wasn't as commonplace as it is now, right? So I decided to go to nursing school because one, I didn't have the workload that I was used to. So I was kind of bored. I love education. So I went to nursing school down in New Orleans. And again, I was forced with that why. I was learning all this stuff and I would raise my hand and I would ask my teacher, I'd be like, but why is this happening? And nobody could give me an answer still. So I was pretty frustrated. I did that for a couple semesters and then I decided to make a big switch and a big change. And I found IHP. I was researching a whole bunch of, integrative, functional, naturopathic type of natural medicine. And I came across the certification and I did my research. I think it took me all of 4 days to make the decision to jump ship and to go this route instead. And I would say it's probably been the best decision of my entire life, without a doubt. I've been able to kind of cross that bridge with those stubborn clients that have those health issues. And not only that, but I've been able to kind of open up my own window to my own health and realize that I was dealing with mold. I was dealing with parasites. I was dealing with Lyme since I've been 14 years old. I was dealing with a gut overgrowth and all of the things that I'm helping all of my clients through now. And it kind of made me realize, I thought I was healthy. I was always an athlete. I would eat great. I was always in shape. But to run those labs on myself and be like, okay, well, this is why I'm waking up super tired, or this is why I'm having a 3 p.m. afternoon crash, or this is why I might have like these weird skin breakouts sometimes. If I was the healthiest person in my own mind and I had all these issues, I knew that this was way more commonplace than, conventional medicine allows it to be told. So that's kind of how I got here. I was always driven on a more like why kind of a path. And then this finally gave me my answer. So I'm super happy that I jumped ship when I did. And I'm super happy that all of my clients kind of reaped in those benefits as well, because now not only did I change my own life, but now one person at a time, I'm definitely reaching way more people than I could have before.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that is such an important factor of IHP, because there's other health coaching certifications out there. There's other programs that are similar, but very few of them use functional medicine lab testing to identify the why, right? The root cause of how did you get here? Because it's in order for us to, find a way to bring someone back, we have to figure out how they got there, right? And understanding what has led to either the deficiencies or the toxicities, so that we can kind of make sure that they don't get back to that place, right? It's such an important part, I think, of, making sure that someone stays well and we're not just kind of masking symptoms.
Right.
Yeah. And so you were just in nursing school, did you say for 4 months? And then you were like, somebody's still not giving me my answer, so I'm leaving.
Yeah, I was in it for a couple semesters and it took me 4 days to
4 days.
Yeah. Once I found IHP online, I reached out to a bunch of different IHPs that had already graduated. And I was just asking them about the program, how they felt about it afterwards, if they were being successful in their jobs, is this their full-time job? What did they do? And everybody had great things to say and nobody said, don't do it. So I took that as a sign and I just went for it, followed my gut.
Yep.
No pun intended here. And then I was able to kind of heal myself. And now look where I am. I'm loving it every single day. I love my job.
That's great. Yep. I always say, or somebody said to me, never, or there's a saying, but I did have a family member that always used to say, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And it's, true for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would love to kind of talk about, you mentioned at the beginning that some of your specialty, given where you're living, is mold toxicity, because a lot of the clients that, might be in close proximity to you have experienced Katrina and water damage and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to talk a little bit about that, but then really kind of switching gears and talking about something that we haven't before, which is your husband is in the military, and that does bring you into the lives of other members who are in the military as well, and kind of what you see with their labs, and a lot of kind of how their lifestyle can play into some imbalances. Yeah,
Sure.
I'd love to talk about that because it's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess going into the mold topic first, again, all of these post-Katrina homes down here, breeding ground, right, for this mold situation to kind of rear its ugly head, but also the humidity. So it's not just a New Orleans specific thing. It only takes 60% humidity for mold to grow. And I'd say down here in the South, 60% humidity is a really good day. So that translates into Texas, that translates into Florida, into Alabama, into all of those other areas that are dealing with that like sticky Mississippi humidity. I would say also the tendency of Gulf storms down here and the flooding and everything. It's just the perfect breeding ground. So again, unintentionally, it's become the majority of my practice. But the one thing that I do kind of see the most is what I like to call mold unmasking. So these people are dealing and living in a home for so long that their immune systems are so suppressed by this mold that yes, they have symptoms. And yes, it's obviously gotten so bad to the point that they come and seek out professional help. But when they move, or if they remediate, or if they leave that environment, sometimes those mold symptoms can get worse after avoiding mold, because the immune system is actually given a break. It's given a chance to start building itself back up. And when that happens, that immune system is like, okay, I think we have a problem now. I mean, there's mold head to toe. We got to start doing something about this. And then all of those symptoms, like threefold, tenfold, start coming out, and people getting more sick after they leave those environments or after they remediate. But I would say there's a couple of different aspects that I really focus on when I'm working with mold clients. One is absolutely mitochondria and drainage. Those are my first two steps, making sure that people's, bowels are moving before we start binding out that mold toxins, making sure their kidneys and their liver are filtering properly, because mold loves to store in those two organs. And then working on cellular energy, mitochondria. The body takes a really rough beating. I know personally when you have mold toxicity, and that mitochondria really takes a hit as well, which is why something like the organic acids test is really great to see how your mitochondria are doing. Other than that, the lymphatic system is huge too. A lot of times mold, when we start pulling it out of tissues, will start congesting up that lymph. And I always say sweat. Absolutely. Sweat every single day. Get that stuff moving, because it's so easy to recirculate those toxins. Just like if you were to kind of go outside into your backyard. I mean, at least down here in this humidity again, if I have a mushroom outside and I'm like, this mushroom sucks, I'm going to kick it. And I kick it out of my lawn. And then all of those spores spread, right? And then the next morning I wake up, now I have 20 mushrooms on my lawn. Same thing happens when we start treating mold. We're disturbing it. And now we're causing those mycotoxins to replicate. So that's the one thing that I make my clients aware of when we're treating or going after, a mold toxicity, is things can definitely get worse before they get better. But as long as you're consistent and as long as you keep on going after this, it will get better eventually.
Which is such super important, right? To have some sort of an honest, container to put clients in, because a lot of people who don't understand necessarily the intricacy of what we do, and how sometimes pulling back one layer can actually reveal something else. And, for them to know that this is truly a process that you're going to see them through, but it's not this linear, okay, just because I'm working on it, I'm going to feel better and better and better every single day. Right. There can be dips. And I think, supporting clients just by giving them that knowledge ahead of time is super important, because then their expectations are, exactly what they should be, and they're not surprised, essentially,
Yeah.
in the process.
I It's like a buffer statement for me with everybody, because a lot of times if people do get, worse off, they're like, hey, why am I even doing this to begin with? I feel worse than I did beforehand. So they kind of have to understand, so that they don't hit that wall and then quit. They hit that wall and say, hey, there's a ladder here somewhere. I got to go find it, and we're going to get over this. I would say emotions play a really big part too, especially with mold, because it will get into that brain and it will start affecting those neurotransmitters. Obviously, it'll affect the neurotransmitters in the gut as well. It likes cold, dark, damp places like the gut, like the sinuses. So I always say emotions are going to be an issue too here. As we get through, you're going to have your days where you're just going to want to quit, and you're going to be, feeling down in the dumps, but the next day might get a little better, and the day after that might get a little bit better too. So we always have to keep that light at the end of the tunnel within our vision when we're dealing with mold, because it's a long road. It's not a short, quick fix, that's for sure. The one thing I've noticed with clients down here is if you have a serious enough mold toxicity, it's not just like a couple months. It's going to be something that you're working on for quite some time.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, another one of those things where if you're living in a damp place, on really humid days, sometimes you can feel worse than if the humidity is, 20% less than it was yesterday. And things can kind of ebb and flow depending on your environment too. Like, did you completely remediate? Are you out of the exposure? Are you still in it? There's so many factors that can kind of play into the healing journey itself.
Yeah. And that statement, what did they say? You can't heal in the same environment that you got sick in.
Yes.
That's another one. Not enough people understand that, remediation needs to be done in order for you to get better.
Yes. Yeah. I always say you can't dry off in the shower. If you're standing in the shower and it's on, it's going to be hard for that towel to dry you off. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's kind of the gist that I go. I focus on drainage and energy first, making sure that they have those pathways open, they have the energy needed to detox.
Mm-hmm.
Then we jump into the gut, we heal that up. We jump into the circulation after those intestinal walls are nice and strong. And then after the circulation, we're diving really deep into cells and tissues. So we're not going too fast, too quick. The body has a chance to kind of keep up with everything. That's the one thing, I think it was somewhere around 93%. I might be wrong here, but I think 93% of patients who had chronic fatigue had some type of mycotoxin within their system. So fatigue is a huge, huge issue. And if you don't have the energy to get you through the day, how are you going to keep up with your supplements? How are you going to keep up with the sauna use? How are you going to sweat every day if you don't have the energy to do it? So I think knowing that not going too fast, too quick when it comes to mold is a really good tip.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I would love to switch gears a little bit and talk about kind of what you see as this kind of big umbrella picture of, my guess is mostly gentlemen, but maybe there's some men mixed in there too, that are in the military and maybe traveling or maybe on military bases. Or what are you kind of seeing as a big umbrella picture for these guys, and how are you supporting that community?
Yeah, you're right. I would say the majority is definitely gentlemen. I have worked with maybe a handful of women in the military as well. The common things that I really see are toxicities, without a doubt. Their lifestyle, their exposure, obviously, to reloading ammunition, to gunfire. They are around hazardous cleaning chemicals all day long. There's using these solvents and these exhaust fumes wherever they are. Then housing, if they have been in military housing, if they have had access on military bases to tap water. A lot of people don't even know the real contaminants in tap water, so that's always something that I keep in mind in the back of my head. If they've been on deployments before, burn pits are a really big thing. I worked with this one woman who was deployed, and she got hit with an IED, and then they put her in a field hospital. And the field hospital, she said her window was right next to the burn pit. So every day as she was trying to heal from this explosion, she was just breathing in all of these toxic chemicals. And they come back, and not only do they have these emotional things that kind of are this block towards healing, but they also have these physical toxicities. They're dealing with mold, they're dealing with all of these chemicals in their body. I see a lot of pesticides. I also see a lot of things like solvents and xylenes and exhaust fumes, a lot of lead toxicity, a lot of heavy metals as well, and a lot of low testosterone, unfortunately, because all of these toxicities, all of these pathogens, these infections that they are, exposed to throughout their service makes hormone levels decrease, right? We kind of learned that in IHP, how that stress is going to cause those tanking levels of hormones. So a lot of them do come to me, trying to work on not only making themselves feel better, not only increasing energy, but starting to build back up that natural T production again. Um, there's a wide variety of people in the military that I do work with, but some subsets that I have seen, like more of the special warfare type of group, they tend to have a little bit more of higher toxicities just because of the nature of their job. And I think that what I have seen, just implementing the strategies that we've learned in IHP, implementing functional labs and all of these, de-stress protocols as we're working through them, it really, really makes a difference for them. When I work with military guys, I love it because they're super regimented. You tell them to do something and they say, yes, ma'am, absolutely. I don't have to check in with them, every other day, making sure they're keeping up with their protocol. They're on top of it. They can take care of themselves for sure. And I've seen really, really great results with them. I've seen energy levels come up. I've seen testosterone levels come up. I had one guy was even joking around. He was like, I'm pretty sure that you just smuggled HGH into these supplements because I'm like doing great at the gym. He's like, my muscles are coming back. My testosterone levels increasing. I'm like, that's you. That's all you, buddy. You don't have to give credit to any supplements for that. That's just your body naturally working the way that it should be working again. And that's another thing that I see, it's really rewarding to be able to give back to that community, right? Because they sacrifice so much for us and they don't expect anything back. Mm-hmm. So to be able to help those people is a really great added benefit of this job too.
Yeah, I was just thinking that as you were talking, that isn't it amazing how you have this kind of little, corner of your practice where you're able to support, these men and women who are coming back from deployment or who have been serving for years and years. And when you think about it, it's like all of these, I think, at least myself up until like this conversation, I probably would have thought to myself, veterans or military men who have, whether it be emotional based issues or like psychosis or, we would think it's like from what they saw, but maybe it's from what they saw and experienced, but also that there's massive toxicity in the body. And there's so much there's been so much altered in their systemic based wellness that their bodies almost can't even like deal with, what the mental repercussions are from what they've seen and what they've endured because they're so bogged down with toxicity.
Yeah, I would say I know negative feedback loops are actually a positive thing, right? When we talk about the body, but this is actually a negative loop because not only is there, emotional trauma kind of blocking them from healing, but then we have the toxicities that are driving them deeper. And then it comes right back to the emotions, comes right back to the toxins, and it just keeps circulating over and over again. So until they can actually, put that wedge in that wheel and start the process, it just keeps going and going and going. I've seen some of the highest levels of environmental toxins on labs that I've ever seen in my practice with military guys. And again, in that case, a lot of times it takes them a little bit longer to get over these things than it would take, somebody who has like, 25% overgrowth. These guys are working with way more than that. Everything in their job is super intense and they have to be totally present for these things. And if they're not physically able to be there, it's kind of hard to be there mentally as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I thinking back, like it's one of those things where they're exposed to, like, if I'm thinking about the GPL test, right? Like
Mhm.
somebody in the military is going to be exposed to literally every single
Everything.
one, everything from the explosives to the pesticides to like
Mhm.
the dry cleaning materials, probably with their uniforms, to tanks, military vehicles dealing with gasoline and all of that. It's yeah, pretty.
Yeah, I mean, they're the workhorses, right? They're in charge of it all. So from top to bottom, it's not just they're not just jumping on these boats and these vehicles and driving them. They're maintaining them as well. So they have all of this stuff. My husband comes home with stuff all over his hands. His hands are black when he comes home. I'm like, oh, please go in the shower. Get some soap on that, please. Oh man, but yeah, they're in it for sure. So their exposure is quite high, and that's another reason why I kind of, again, unintentionally here have that subset of clientele that I deal with and help out. And like the majority of the population, not too many people are aware that these things build up in the body, or that we're even exposed to these things at all. And when they do realize that, and they see those labs, and again, with men, a lot of times it takes them to actually see the numbers on paper for them to be like, all right, let's do it. I see it. Let's go for it. Whereas women, you can be like, okay, like this is this and this is going on. They're like, all right, let's go. But sometimes I've had some women be like, well, my husband's a little bit, pulling back on this. What do you suggest? And I'm like, just show him the lab work. Because when you have it in black and white, then they can be like, okay, I get it. Let's do it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I always say lab work for some people is kind of like a non-issue because they just inherently trust the practitioner and they're like, okay, if you think X, Y, and Z is what I should do, that's what I'm going to do. But for
Mhm.
some people, even though you would say like, okay, you've been in the military, I know what you've been exposed to, I know this is probably what you need. The lab work is just the proof and kind of the motivation, right?
Yeah.
The quantitative,
Yep.
yeah,
Absolutely.
that's where they need to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a very black and white job. So for them to have, a black and white data set in front of them, it makes it a lot easier for them to, adhere to a protocol too.
Sure. Now, do you work with them while they're still active service men and women? And okay,
Yes,
and you're
both.
able. Good.
I would say the majority are still active service. And then generally after we kind of work through a full protocol, working on all the aspects, I'll give them a lot of lifestyle recommendations per se that can kind of help keep that toxic level low, even though obviously the exposure isn't going anywhere.
Sure. Yeah, but just keeping the drain open, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes a huge place to start and allowing somebody to just have better detoxification pathways. Okay, so you're not going to like drain their whole rain barrel, but at least just drill a
Mhm.
few holes in the side of it so that it can
Yeah, a
drain.
couple extra holes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And I think this kind of brings such a good point to, other practitioners who might be listening. And, I think we're kind of forced to like, ooh, find your niche and being forced to kind of figure it out. Right. But sometimes there's, a way that depending on where we're at in our life and what kind of a community we're surrounded by, our niche kind of finds us in a
Mhm.
sense. And I'm not saying like not to be proactive, but in your case, you're living in a place where these are two very uh, can be sick people who need a ton of foundational support and functional help. And you're able to kind of support these two subsets of people that wouldn't be necessarily your clientele if you lived in, Vermont and your husband wasn't in the military.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All I did was kind of just keep moving forward and helping everybody that I could. And as, the years went by, like you said, that niche just kind of found me, and it worked out, I would say.
Yes. Yeah. And so thank you for all you're doing to kind of support and help them because they are, such an integral part of our country and every freedom we have. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, if kind of someone's listening and they want to find more about you, where's your website, your social media handle, any kind of programs that you have?
Yeah. So I've named my practice Ohana Wellness Company. Ohana, obviously meaning family, if you ever watched Lilo and Stitch, right?
Mhm.
But basically, the reason behind naming it Ohana Wellness Company is I really wanted to make my clients feel like they were family. I've had quite a few practitioners in the past who have just brushed me off. Oh, you're bloated, eat better. Doesn't feel great, right? So when you have somebody that actually cares about you and listens to you, it makes a really big difference. But you can check me out at ohanawellness.com, or you can go to my Instagram, which is ohana_wellness. And I put up, educational tips and stuff every single day. So there's always a little bit of education out there if you do feel like following. And I do have a program that I work with new clients in, and it's called the Integrative Health Bundle. It's a package of 3 sessions, and it's just focused on driving to the root cause of everybody's health issues, which, as you mentioned in the beginning, everybody's root causes are going to be different. I don't think I've ever seen somebody with just one root cause either. So there's always we take a lot of time in that bundle to get to know each other, and so that we can really connect the dots and figure out how to truly, truly heal the body from the inside out.
Yes. And, to our point earlier, even when it looks like it might just be one root cause, once you pull that one root cause back,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
usually another one underneath there. And, kind of just doing your due diligence as you continue to get to know each other and, moving forward. I say sometimes it's kind of like whack-a-mole. You get one mole down and another one pops up and
Yep, exactly. Yep.
yeah. And I love the whole, Ohana, the family aspect, right? Because a lot of people too, I think we forget because a lot of us can kind of be surrounded by other wellness minded practitioners, right? Who kind of think like us. But for some people, they're leaving maybe a family or an extended family who believes a lot in conventional medicine. And they kind of think like, oh, you're going to like go ask her for help. Like, well, is she a doctor?
Mhm.
And so kind of finding some sort of connection that feels more than just like practitioner, patient relationship that feels a little bit more connected than that really helps someone let their guard down and, kind of get relaxed into the space of what they're about to endure, even if they don't have the support, from the other quote unquote family at home.
Exactly. I mean, I have people come just to our first 90-minute consultation, and all they want to be is heard.
Mhm.
And as soon as you sit there and just let them talk, I've had people start crying just from talking, because it's the first time that a practitioner actually was listening to what was going on and not discrediting their symptoms and saying, okay, well, this could possibly be why, or, well, this is going on in your life and this can definitely be a driving factor. And once they start, just like I did when I remember when I first started IHP and I started learning this, like, every time I would log in, my eyes would just open and I'd be like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. I hear that over and over every time that I sit down with somebody. They're like, finally, like, I understand, I get it. Why didn't I realize this before? It's just, yeah, it's a really rewarding experience. And then, to have those clients who now are like family goes a long way too. I mean, the majority of practices come off of referrals, right? So the better your clients are, the better that your relationship with them is, the more chances that your business is going to grow as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, another great point. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. This
Of
was such a
course.
great interview, and I appreciate you being here and sharing everything you did with us.
Awesome. Of course. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure. Talk soon. Thanks,
All
Brianne.
right. Bye.